For years, the Trump administration has relied on workers who entered the US illegally. And this is actually according to workers who say the practice is still going on today. President Trump doesn't want undocumented people in the country, said one worker, Jorge Castro, a 55-year-old immigrant from Ecuador without legal status, who left the company in April after 9 years. But at his property, Castro says he still has them. Now, Castro actually detailed his long experience with the company, saying he worked on 7 Trump properties, most recently Trump's golf club in Northern Virginia. He provided the Washington Post with several years of his pay stubs from Trump's construction company, Mobile Payroll Construction LLC, as well as photos of him and his colleagues on Trump horses and text messages he exchanged with his boss, including one in January, dispatching him, to Trump's New Jersey golf course. Another immigrant who worked for the Trump construction crew, Edmundo Morocho, said he was told by a Trump supervisor to buy fake identity documents on a New York street corner. He said he once hid in the woods of a Trump golf course to avoid being seen by visiting labor union officials. And just to take it back a bit, you will remember that in January, Eric Trump, of course, one of Donald Trump's sons and a top Trump organization executive, told the Post that the company was making a broad effort to identify any employee who was given false and fraudulent documents to unlawfully gain employment, saying any individuals would be immediately fired. So according to current and former employees, though, nothing has changed. The White House had no comment, but a spokeswoman, for the Trump organization did say Mobile Payroll Construction is enrolled in E-Verify for any new hires. The company is still not listed in the public E-Verify database, though, which was updated last month, July 1st.
Yeah, as usual, liars. No, there's a database. Right. We can check it. They're not in there. You know why? Because they still have undocumented immigrants.
Right.
They did a show of firing some of the undocumented immigrants that they've had. But they've had these for, according to the workers who've been there, some of whom are undocumented, 19 years. For 19 years, they've hired undocumented immigrants. They even asked Trump. Trump said, they asked him, are you guys still using undocumented immigrants? You would think that, especially for Trump, who lies all the time, that'd be like, no problem. Like, oh no, never. We never use them, or we certainly don't use them now. No, it's weird. He actually hesitated because he knows it's so true. And so he said, well, that I don't know because I don't run it. But I would say this, probably every club in the United States has that, because it seems to me, from what I understand, the way that people did business. Well, they didn't ask about people, they asked about you, right? So that comment right there means, oh yeah, definitely, definitely. When Trump says, well, it could be, that means, oh, we're definitely doing it, and we're still doing it. And of course he knows, he talks to his kids all the time. To give you the depth of how much they did it, Sanzo was the guy who organized this group that they called, I mean, it was so well known that other employees of the Trump organization called them the Flintstones, because it was a group that worked on waterfalls and different construction projects, et cetera. They gave them a nickname. They're undocumented. They would know when to hide. They'd go into the woods to hide when labor unions came, et cetera. So the Washington Post reporter calls Sanzo, who head of the group, who is, I think, Italian and is a citizen, but he put the group together of undocumented immigrants. When they called him, he said, most of my guys were legal. Okay, and then he says, well, I don't know if they were legal or not. Okay, in other words, of course they weren't legal, of course. The guys who are undocumented said, oh yeah, Sanzo would tell us to go to Queens and pick up ID for $50. And then he'd say it was good enough. In fact, Sanzo said, they gave me a social and a license. I put them on the payroll. So brazen. Right. Never cared about the issue.
I think it's a thing. I first and foremost love that this witness brought all these receipts forward.
Yeah,
I love receipts. Yeah. I love receipts, especially toward an administration that creates their own facts. Mm-hmm. The other piece is that, my honest opinion, I don't think Trump actually has a problem with migrant workers or undocumented people. I think he pandered to a specific base who he riled them up, and now the villagers with the torches are like, who do we blame? And he snatched a page from Hitler's book of Mein Kampf, and we'll blame the undocumented people, the immigrants, the illegal immigrants. And so now he's having to walk back all of that energy he put into his campaign. But when it comes to how he does business and his own ethics and practices, I do not believe Trump cares one way or another as long as his bottom line dollar is increased.
So, okay, so I agree and slightly disagree because I do believe that he is overwhelmingly racist. So I do believe that at all times, and I know you know so too, like he does not believe these people are as human as he is or someone who looks like him. But of course, he would love to abuse them and pay them less and be able to like skirt under the bridge a little bit when it comes to taxes and any other money that has to come out of his pocket, out of his business. Sure, he'll exploit them.
But of course, racism, though, hello, like slavery, there's no, it's one of those things, like they were racist, obviously, but the thing is that they still saw the economic opportunity. And to this day, we still see that they had hundreds of years of free labor. And we have some of these old companies still standing that are empires based on the labor. So I think that the real issue is that America really doesn't have a problem with migrant workers any more than they had a problem with black slaves. The issue is that when you start reaching for rights, benefits, and protections, then it becomes a problem.
Well, so I agree with both of you.
I know. I think that I ended up agreeing with her.
No, I know. So, but I just want to explain, guys. So if you're trying to figure out how Trump works, there's the underlying racism, which are the stereotypes that are in his head. So, and they're like classic stereotypes. Puerto Ricans are lazy, that's why they didn't help themselves in the hurricane, right? And African Americans are violent, and and Latinos are criminals, and all these different underlying things. Oh, when he went to go speak to the Jewish Republicans, you guys like to renegotiate more than anybody else does.
But white man in mass shootings, it's just mental illness. They need
it's a lone wolf, of course. If it's a Muslim, he's part of a terrorist organization that's worldwide, that's connected to all Muslims. So that's the underlying infrastructure. But on a day by day, it's all about the money, right? You're a Hispanic immigrant, but I get to pay you less? Great deal, who cares? What do I care, right? Oh, you're a Saudi, and normally I would hate you, but you're paying me $40-50 million for a condo, then I like it. So that's fine, no problem.
Sure, you can murder the journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, it's fine, it's no big deal.
Of course, and that is separate from my other stereotypes, et cetera, because now money's involved, and that's my day-to-day interaction with you. So, and Ashlee Marie, you're 100% right that he never really cared about this issue because he's been doing this for decades, hiring undocumented immigrants. Never thought that like he might have stereotypes about Latinos, but undocumented immigrants as workers didn't bother him at all, right? And so why? Why did he go down this path politically? Because he A/B tested the crowd. And so he would go in front of the crowd and I would see him early on in the campaigns. He would say one thing and see how the crowd reacted. And then he would say another thing and see how the crowd reacted. And remember, Trump, you've seen this with your own eyes for years now, will say two different things in a paragraph that are diametrically opposed, the complete opposite. It's part of his instinctual A/B testing. Because how do I get liked? How do I grab the spotlight, right? So, not that he literally did this, but probably got close in some of the speeches, and certainly he did it behind the scenes in talking to his advisors, other conservatives, Breitbart, Steve Bannon, et cetera.
But there were also people that were leading some of those studies. So I remember reading an article recently where journalists had identified specific plants in the audience who would start chanting something, and then they were actually identified as people who were hired by the administration. So they would lead these chants, send her back, all of these things to see how people reacted.
Right, but in the beginning, he tested his messages. So we like undocumented immigrants, boo. No, we hate undocumented immigrants, okay, that's it, then we're going with hate. We're hating undocumented immigrants, they're the worst, but Donald, you hire tons of them. Who cares? They like the message. Hypocrisy, it's like I was born in it, right? So last thing, guys, one of the workers, Moracho, said, quote, nobody had papers. Okay, about his workers that worked on these different Trump properties, nobody had papers. And I want, again, if we had a strong Democratic Party, everything could be different. Because in one of the raids last year, in the the Tennessee raid, they actually arrested the guy who runs the company. Because it's illegal to hire the undocumented immigrants. It's more illegal than the guys being undocumented in the first place, because you're hiring hundreds of them, right? Under that precedent and law, you would arrest Donald Trump. We know for a fact they turned over dozens of undocumented immigrants recently saying, yeah, they work here and now we're firing them. So why aren't we arresting Trump? Look, I know they're not gonna arrest Trump, but Democrats, you wanna do a press conference? You want to get up there and go, hey, Donald Trump has had undocumented immigrants working for him for years. He should be arrested. If you say he should be arrested, one, you would be technically correct, and two, it would create headlines and outrage. And then, you know what would happen then? Then everybody would be talking about what kind of a criminal Donald Trump is and what a giant hypocrite is. And as it stands, other than like people who read the Washington Post, New York Times, and watch the Young Turks, nobody else knows. You think your neighbor knows that Trump has been hiring undocumented immigrants for 2 decades? They don't know because the goddamn Democrats can't open their mouths and fight back.
But the Sesame Street I word of the day, impeachment, it would actually lend to the impeachment case they're building. Because it's currently happening still. So we're not talking decades ago, we're talking today as we sit here, there are unethical practices and they're violating the very laws that they push forward.
And none of this is hard, they're just choosing not to do it. Well, hey, you made it this far. You must really like the Young Turks. Thank you, we really appreciate you. Now, another easy way to keep supporting us also helps keep your internet activities and data private, all with a push of the NordVPN app. Head to nordvpn.com/TYT right now for 75% off of your next 3 years.